Thank you very much, Sue. I think many people feel that the end of the perinatal period stops when you put those prized possessions, the little name bracelet from the hospital, the first bib, the first curl, the first booties in a little box, put them under your bed or somewhere special, and we can look back at that perinatal period and think, oh, wasn't that lovely? And we move on in life. And that is fantastic. And I know that is the case for some women. Yet I would love to just really tweak tonight and make you aware of how important your role is in maximising good mental health for women and all their families. I'd love to encourage you to learn more about perinatal mental health, whichever part, whatever you know at the moment. Maybe you know lots, maybe you only know little. I'm as an ex-teacher, I'm always a believer we can always learn more. And also, I would love to inspire you possibly to look at doing some more research into this area. I'm actually turning 60 this August, and life, I don't quite know how that's happened, but it's true. And with age, let's say, I think sometimes, wisdom comes into it, and maybe some pearls of wisdom. So what gives me the right to be here tonight? Let me just briefly go through my story. I was a school teacher. I was happily married. I was very much a list writer. Back in 1996, when I had my baby, I'm sure if there were apps, I would have had them all, and they would have been running concurrently and everything. I planned to precision. I loved being pregnant. I rehearsed the birth. Everything was done with military precision. And sadly, the birth started out how it was going to be, with the water birth, the incense burning, the panpipes playing. And I was waiting for this magical moment of this baby just appearing, my husband cradling me in his arms and the baby kissing me on the head and saying, oh, Elaine, what a wonder of nature we've produced. That was on the plan. Unfortunately, the baby ultimately was born with a cord round his neck. I was whisked off to theatre. I was told later I'd had a retained placenta, a postpartum hemorrhage. And immediately, really after the birth, it was me, Elaine, that put myself in that I must be doing. I would love to tell that Elaine now, go back, Elaine, you don't have to do all of that. You need to rest when baby does. You need to listen to people. But I didn't. I was due back at work in September as a teacher, and I just felt that by then, really, my son should be driving a car. It was on the list, it had to happen. So I put all these pressures on myself. I pushed people away. And the week I was due back at my teaching job, he was rushed into hospital with suspected meningitis and a very poorly little baby. And it was after that my GP recognised that I had postnatal depression. My reaction was one of actually relief, because she explained to me it was an illness, that I could be treated and I would get better. She didn't tell me that I was useless, I was a failure, and she was surprised at me, which was what my internal dialogue was telling me. I went to a support group, I took medication because I wanted to get well, but I put on this facade of I'm doing okay. In reality, my mental health was unravelling, and ultimately by the Christmases the mum I had longed to be, I could be found walking the streets in my nightie. When I was found, I sat on the kitchen floor and carved my legs with a knife. I threatened to throw my baby down the stairs. I bit my lovely dad, all of these things, and resulted in being admitted to the local psychiatric ward away from my baby. I was told because I'd done all of those things, I should be away from my baby for his sake. I now know, as a breastfeeding mum at the time, that was the worst thing that could have happened. And that's why to this day, I fully support the need for mother and baby units. I had 8 weeks as an inpatient. I had various treatments, but the one that I have to say put me back on the road to recovery was ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. I was diagnosed with puerperal psychosis. 7 months postnatally, that usually occurs in the first few hours or days postnatally. But for me, it was later, but it was still in that perinatal period. I finally did get my life back. Certainly wasn't overnight recovery, but bit by bit I did. And again, so many people back then talked about the stigma of "we are surprised of you." So excuse me, I've forgotten the word. Oh dear, I'll come back to it. Compliant person I am. People said I should share my story. So I did. And my first book came out now in 2005, Eyes Without Sparkle. I gave up teaching and I've been doing the rounds of the conferences and lectures ever since. Part of my journey was I never had another baby. Our marriage dissolved, and that was one of the main reasons. And with all the things that I learned, I wrote my second book, which is called Another Twinkle in the Eye, which is a guide for parents and professionals to help people make that decision. Do they or don't they extend to their family? Because actually, in my case, and about the many other women that I am aware of and fathers, the perinatal period can actually become the best contraception, because it's so difficult. If you have had a difficult time, what do you do? So hence that was my second book. As the interim years have gone on, more and more it's occurred to me that the women I've spoken to, the families I've spoken to, that it's not just that perinatal period. As I say, we can't just box it away and move on. So I'd just like to touch on some of the areas that I feel I would love more research, just more awareness, and also to say to you, thank you for what you are doing to look after your own and the family's mental health, because it matters. So we're not just talking, we are talking the mum, we're talking the dad or the partner, we're talking grandparents, we're talking the children, we're talking the siblings, we're talking the aunties, the uncles, the friends, the neighbours, anybody in that inner circle involving that pregnancy or child. So the long-term impacts. Of course, we hear about PTSD. We talk about birth trauma. For some people, that stays with them for years and years, and they can continue their poor mental health. One of my very close friends actually said to me one day that I was lucky that I'd become as ill as I did, because in doing that, I got all the help, I got the support, and ultimately made a full recovery. Years later, she is still on antidepressants because she said that ill health started post-pregnancy, and she never really, as she could describe me, she didn't get scooped up like I did. So they can be long-term effects. The guilt you have, as Rosie so beautifully said about, what could she do? Could she be a good enough mum really for this child? That does matter to you. And there's a wide-ranging research out there that shows the impact on the child of antenatal depression and anxiety and postnatal. So put on that traumatic birth as well. And you as a mum can carry that guilt around for the rest of your life if your child has problems. And again, a marriage breakdown, that is also, well, how's that going to affect the child? Relationships are affected by that perinatal period. For some who have had a difficult time, that actually builds and strengthens their bond together, and they have a much better relationship. It's not all negative. Yet for some, that family does break down because you're not the same person that you were previously to that pregnancy. Your confidence and your character can change. So many women have shared with me that they had really good jobs before they actually got married, and they felt that the loss of confidence, their anxiety, whatever it was, that they actually had to change or lose their career. Mine changed. I stopped teaching, and I've had an amazing time, quite frankly, with all the places I've visited, the opportunities I've had as a result of it. Yet, fundamentally, that marriage broke down. The one time that really hit home to me about how the long-term effects are there was when about 12, 13 years ago, I had to have a hysterectomy. And the gynecologist just briefly said to me, did you ever want any more children? Because this is nature's way of telling you you can't. And that was it. And I was grateful for all the knowledge that I have acquired through being involved with things like this, that I was aware if I needed to talk to other people about it, and just to come to that terms with that, because I'd always clung on to that hope that maybe one day I would have another child. And that was the definite, no, you won't. The menopause as well, for the women who have gone through life thinking, well, if only, or I should have done. Can we look more at what happens hormonally? You know, if you've had a tough time perinatally, does that mean around the menopause you might have additional problems? I think the impact with you on other life changes. I lost my partner 12 years ago this week, suddenly with a heart attack. When you get something like bereavement, and you get some of the similar symptoms that you do with perinatal depression, the lack of sleep, the lack of appetite, the roller coastering of emotions, you can get very scared that, oh no, are you going down that road again? Even though the circumstances are different, that vulnerability is very much there. Friends of mine approaching the empty nest. Again, particularly if you've just had one child, you put everything into that child. And of course, it's right that they leave home and move on. But that can be another time that I know women have said how vulnerable they've felt. And also, if people have lost a baby, or maybe they had a really tough time with a premature baby, every year, every anniversary, it's we say, oh, I lost my baby 14 years ago today. They're not celebrating there with a birthday cake, or the 17 they can learn to drive. It's an anniversary that's painful. It was a baby. It was a real life. It was someone that mattered to them. So all of these things, as I say, I just feel we shouldn't just box them in that perinatal period. And I hope I've just touched on some of those things there that make you think, yes, it is important that we do have the much better resources, the facilities for perinatal mental health. I mean, even the term, 10 years ago, perinatal didn't exist. We just talked about postnatal depression. Whereas now with wonderful ladies like Rosie sharing what happened to them antenatally, as she said quite clearly, when everyone expects you to be full of the joys of spring and, oh, how amazing, when you don't feel like that, it's very tough. So what can you do? I am not suggesting for one moment that I expect that as a midwife, you should also be a fully trained psychiatrist, that you should know exactly what drugs, all of these different things. No, I believe it comes down to the fundamentals of good care. Top of the list is listen. Listen, listen, and listen again. And also hear what people are saying. Really give them time to share what really is happening in their life, if they're concerned, what they are. Part of that then is to be informed and share that knowledge. Do you know, for example, where and who is your local perinatal mental health unit? Where is that network? Where is the local mother and baby unit? Do you know what purple psychosis is? Where could you look that up? If you don't know, I encourage you, find out. We all don't know everything. Of course we don't. The important thing is to think, okay, that's a really good question, and I'll go and find out. The final point I would like to make is just, four-letter word, isn't it? Just. The importance of kindness. That to me is in capitals. That is the real headline here. The small actions make the big difference. As Sue said in her introduction tonight, it is the small things that really matter. Let me take you back to the birth that I had. All hell seemed to be breaking loose down at the messy end. The water birth had gone, the panpipes had gone, and there was chaos and mayhem, it seemed. It felt like this room had 20 doors and people were coming in from all over, shouting at me, telling me, come on, Elaine, you'll have to push this baby out or you'll have to go to theatre. And I honestly thought, why? What's on? But all the time, there was this midwife at the side of me. To this day, I don't know her name. I don't even know what she looks like. But she was holding my hand. She was stroking my hair at my cheek, and all the time in a beautiful, calm, reassuring voice, telling me how well I was doing, how soon that I would have my baby, that everybody there was doing the best for me. All these years on, I just can feel her presence. I know midwife means with woman. She certainly was with me. You can be with women and their families, and all that means to be with them at one of their most vulnerable, the most exciting, and the most incredible time of bringing a new child into this world. Thank you for what you do.